Cloudy over the northern half of the country tomorrow with outbreaks of rain. Highest temperatures 8 to 11 degrees in mostly moderate southwest winds. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
All you need for Christmas.
News Talk's Christmas cash machine.
Oh, get in there!
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
Your chance to win big.
Well, no winner on our latest Christmas cash machine call, so we've rolled over the prize money and it now stands at €15,167.49. If you enter after 5 o'clock yesterday, you're still in with a chance to win. If not, you can enter now by texting the word play to 57599. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock tomorrow and we could be calling you back. If your phone rings, answer it within 5 rings, tell us the exact amount and all that money is yours. So remember the amount again, €15,167.49. Text the word play to 57599. Over 18s only. Text cost €2.50. Terms and conditions are on newstalk.com.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're welcome back. Just before we get into the football show, this Christmas more than ever will be about quality catch-ups with family and friends. To celebrate on OT Sports, we're hosting a special panel discussion with some familiar friends. Keep an eye out for that. We are also running a competition this week where you could win a pair of tickets to a Republic of Ireland home game in 2022, as well as an Ireland football jersey. To be in with a chance of winning, just identify our mystery voice, a keen golfer working on a short game which is now super sharp.
It was great. I was able to chip in when I wanted to.
Text your name and answer to 53106 and we'll contact you after the show. Hashtag Carlsberg Christmas. Don't worry if you miss out, by the way. You can win a Carlsberg Christmas gift over at carlsbergcompetition.com. Over 18s only. Get the facts, be drinkaware, visit drinkaware.ie. Now the live football continues, and to that end, time for the football show.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Oh.
Well, it's proving very easy for Manchester City. This evening they are 3-0 up against Leeds United at home. Goals from, well, there's no out-and-out striker, is there? But goals from Foden and Grealish and De Bruyne, and it's fairly miserable for Leeds thus far. Meanwhile, Aston Villa away to Norwich. 61 minutes gone in that game. Ramsey with the goal. Villa are 1-0 up. Very happy to say Damien Delaney is with us. It's been a while. You're very welcome.
Hi Joe, how are you?
Happy Christmas.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
No problem. You're the first person I've said Happy Christmas to this season.
Brilliant.
There you go.
Honoured. Thank you.
Are you watching any of City this evening?
Look, I turned it on. I turned it off after 5 minutes. I'm watching the Norwich Villa game because the way the game started, I just thought it was just going to be City were in the mood, and you knew what was coming, and there was, I won't say there was going to be no enjoyment in it, but you just knew that it was going to be what it was. So I switched over to the Norwich Villa game, and far more interesting game. Watching Villa take shape under Steven Gerrard, and Norwich be Norwich really in the Premier League, but it's actually a really good game. Villa 1-0 up, wonderful goal by the young winger Ramsey, but Villa really are taking shape under Gerrard, and I just find it more enjoyable watch, rather than watching Man City pin Leeds in for 90 minutes and tack on 5 goals.
It's a terrible thing, isn't it, City? Victims of their own brilliance, because we've seen this movie before. Know exactly how this game is going to go. It's going exactly that way. They don't get the credit maybe they deserve for it, and it's, what have you done for me lately, City?
Yeah, I suppose it's gluttonous. You know what's coming, and it's enjoyable at times, but it's like someone giving you too much sweets. After a while you're going to get sick eventually, and you want to take a break from it, and that's kind of tonight. I love watching City in the Champions League. I love watching them in the Premier League in big games, but Leeds are in such a place at the moment where they're struggling, and the way they started the game, City, you as you said, we've seen this movie before, and then I switched over to the Norwich Villa game, and it was far more interesting.
Foden, Grealish, De Bruyne with the goals.
Mm-hmm.
Man City without an out-and-out striker, because Jesus is generally playing on the right-hand side. Playing against a false nine. Maybe they were playing with false nines 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and I don't remember. But certainly the first time I remember false nines coming on the scene was when Spain were in their pomp and they started playing Fabregas, for instance, in that false nine role. So I felt it was during your playing career this became a bit more of a thing.
Yeah.
How did you find playing against a false nine, or did you come up against it that often?
Yeah, I have played against it. Yeah, I mean, I suppose two things from a defensive point of view. First of all, you can go large chunks of the game and it can be very, very lonely. Not a lot is happening around you because you've no one to mark, you've no set role. Most of it is just about confidence, because when teams play with a false nine, they're looking to set traps. And they're probably waiting for that one moment the centre-back switches off. And you'd be surprised amount of times football players, if they're not having a whole pile to do, even if they're doing their job, so to speak, you can lapse in concentration. Your mind can wander and you can think, you know what, I haven't tackled someone, I haven't touched the ball, so I'm going to go into an area that I really shouldn't go into, or I shouldn't be, or I could make an angle for somebody because, well, I've not got any centre forward. It's those split-second decisions that they wait for, because as soon as the centre-back switches off, sometimes, say Bernardo Silva for argument's sake, or David Silva, sorry, when I was playing against it, he would just drift into little pockets, and you'd always be very, very tempted to go, do you know, I can nail him. And sometimes you would take 2 steps to go into that pocket, and all of a sudden the ball is just reversed on the back here. And that's kind of your warning shot of like, don't do that again. Your job as a centre-back, that pocket is perhaps a midfield player. But, when you take out those 2 steps forward, someone like Raheem Sterling will make those internal runs from out to in, and they hit the ball on the back here. Liverpool do it quite a bit with Firmino. I know he's not an out-and-out false number 9, but he's not a 9 who plays up against you. He's somebody that goes short and links it an awful lot. And as a centre-back, you can get caught in awkward situations with your defensive midfield player, with your number 6, because, as Firmino goes short, you're screaming at your number 6 and he's turning around screaming to you, I got my own job to do. I can't do yours for you. And I'm thinking, okay, but if I go with him, Salah's going to make those internal runs right in off the back of me. Mane will make them in off the back of me. So as soon as if you're a centre-back and you get in front of your full-backs, they're the situations that I feel that Salah and Mane are very, very good at. And Liverpool are very, very good at that. So as a centre-back, what you do then is you'll get a yard or two deeper than your full-back, so you can see Salah out the corner of your eye, so you can see the likes of Mane, Raheem Sterling, Sane used to do it an awful lot as well. So you can see those and pick up those internal runs, because full-backs will always be full-backs, and they'll kind of pass those runs on to centre-backs, and they're always thinking about, can we win the ball back and go and join in? So as a centre-back, you will just deepen a couple of yards to pick up those internal runs, but obviously the knock-on effect then is Jordan Henderson or Fernandinho, whoever it was at the time, would start firing balls in to Firmino in the number 10. And then all of a sudden your number 6 is turning around and you're having real life fights with your number 6 in the middle of the game. And I'm trying to explain to him, the problems that I have. And he's saying to me, well, I got my own problems in midfield players. And in the end, good number 6s will always drop back and do your job. And then, of course, you start sinking like the reference I used before is like cutting a hole in the bottom of a bag of sand. It just sinks and the whole team just gets pinned in and then you can't get out. With Liverpool, what they're very, very good at doing as well is when they do hit that ball, when you do deepen to pick up that internal run, Jordan Henderson will hit it anyway. And you as a centre-back, you'd be backpedaling and you pick up the run, you pick up the flight of the ball and you win your header. But because you're backpedaling, you can't get any distance on the header. But when you win the header then, who's in a perfect position to pick it up? Bobby Firmino, because he's the other side of your number 6. So they get you in multiple different fronts. And as teams going to play against number 9, it does present a whole other set of challenges to play against. But again, in the elite level competition, when Man City get further up the road in the Champions League and they play in the big games, I do feel they will need a number 9 to occupy centre-backs. I find it... Look, I say that with no real authority. It's just a feeling that I have that, a number 9 is very, very important. But in games like tonight and kind of games that they're going to dominate 65-70% of the ball, they have time to set up all these little things that I'm talking about, these little internal runs. But I suppose when they only have the ball 50-50, sometimes it's counter-attacking stuff. They're soaking up pressure. So, again, I say that with no real authority. I'd have to kind of see how that would progress. But I do feel that Man City have to get an out-and-out number 9.
Yeah, that'd be my sense too. Since we've been talking, they've scored another and almost scored another 2 on top of that. Mahrez scored, and the crowd at the Etihad shrugged their shoulders and said, is that all there is to life? Yeah. 52 minutes on the clock, so they're 4-0 up. That's all very interesting. And then you mentioned Aston Villa this evening against Norwich. You like what Gerrard's doing thus far. What is a Steven Gerrard Villa team looking like to you?
It's seriously energetic, seriously fit, seriously work rates through the roof, on and off the ball. There's a confidence to them. You can see the way they're setting up with the kind of I suppose, three narrow in midfield in McGinn and Luis, and who's the other one on the other side? His name's dropped out of my head there now, but obviously when opposition fullbacks join in, it's McGinn's and the other players' job to get back out, but then what they do very cleverly is they drop the likes of Ollie Watkins or Ashley Young back in to make up the numbers in midfield, because once one of those three who are tight kind of clogging up the middle of the park, then they break out to engage with the opposition fullback. If the ball gets popped back inside, Douglas Luiz can be left a little bit isolated, but they're really, really good at dropping back in, and that takes a serious amount of hard work and a serious amount of dedication. But when he first got the job at Villa, I watched Steven Gerrard's team kind of taking shape, and you kind of wonder, is this new manager bounce? Is this just, Gerrard coming in with his persona, with his reputation, and the players are all kind of standing to attention and running around a little bit more than they probably had done. And ordinarily that does happen, but after a while, those players go back to being what they are. But I looking at it tonight, a game like Norwich, they're bang at it again. And I think the performance at Liverpool at the weekend was brilliant. They were, I suppose, I wouldn't say they were unlucky, but, they put up a real good fight. And on another day, they could have got something out of the game. So they look seriously energetic, hard work inside. Tyrone Mings is a man transformed. I suppose a lot of the players, they have an awful lot more confidence as well. And the system that he's playing is really, really suiting them. I really like their two fullbacks, Matty Cash and Target. Two guys you probably would have thought are good, solid, Premier League mid-table fullbacks. But Matty Cash is having a fantastic run of games. I watched him in the Liverpool at the weekend. I thought he was fabulous up against Mane and Salah and Target as well. I think the two of them have been fantastic going forward and defending. And as I said, Tyrone Mings looks a man reborn. Yeah.
Jacob Ramsey, by the way, with Louise and McGinn, so he scored this evening. So that's Villa. On a couple of points then I wanted to hit you with. Dele Alli, it seems he is leaving Spurs in January. There were two loan offers for Dele Alli this summer, by the way. PSG, which gives you, a reminder of just how highly some managers, in the case of Pochettino this time around, rate Dele Alli. And he's still only 25 years of age. I mean, the next 6-7 years should be this guy's peak. It's quite extraordinary how his career has developed and then stalled. Under Nuno at the start of this season, he played 5 times, and there was a sense that maybe Nuno really believed in him. Conte has arrived now, and the word is, he says, no thank you. He subbed him at half-time when they were totally outplayed by Arsenal a couple of months back, and since then he's played 19 minutes of Europa Conference League action. So it is very confusing here as to what's happened to Dele Alli. Signed in 2015, age 19, took the world by storm, English international. There's that famous scene, I don't know how famous it is rather, but that memorable-ish scene in the documentary on Spurs, the Amazon documentary, where Mourinho arrives at the club and sits Dele Alli down and says to Dele Alli, when I was at Manchester United, the only player Alex Ferguson came and recommended I sign was you. And in fairness, Alex Ferguson's a decent judge of a player. And Mourinho, he clearly had heard a bit about Dele Alli because he was saying, look, yesterday I was 20, now I'm this age. Time goes by really quickly. You've got to seize your moment. Something's gone badly awry there. What's your read on Dele Alli? First of all, this wasn't just like a guy who freakishly played really well for 2-3 years. I mean, he was genuinely that good, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I got an up-close and personal view of that goal he scored at Selhurst Park, where he flicked it over the head and volleyed it in the corner. Like an incredible goal. A game that we were well in, and I think we were drawing or even winning at the time, and it was a nothing ball, and he flicks it over the midfield player's head and then swivels on it and hits it with his foot in the corner, and we were all kind of stood there going, did he actually just do that?
We just put a picture of it up there, and you're in the corner of the screen. Watching it all unfold, not closing them down either, I'd say, but there you go.
Luckily, I'm sat now with a cup of tea and some digestive mixes, Joe, and I don't really care. He was world class, and from the outside looking in, it's very, very difficult to see what had happened. What's gone on in his personal life. But all things being equal, my take on it would be that he's just lost the hunger. I don't think you can underestimate the requirement of being hungry for football and having a determination, because you're going to face many setbacks, but if your hunger outweighs your kind of those types of setbacks, you'll get over them, and you'll come in Monday morning and train, and you just have that motivated feel to you. And he just doesn't seem to have it, because I remember when Mourinho came in, there was a lot of talk about him as well. This was before the documentary. Remember, Jose played him in the early games, and a couple of times you see Jose really encouraging him from the sideline, if he won a ball back or something. But I think managers try and instill that back into the players. But if the players lost it, the players lost it. If he hasn't got that desire, that drive to be a professional footballer, because being a professional footballer is extremely hard, regardless of, how some people portray the life. It's an incredibly difficult life to have the discipline and the dedication and the will to get up every day and run around, and track runners and fill holes and run forward and do all the things that's required to win games of football, as well as having the mental strength. And just looking at him, I think he just lost it. And that happens, whether Pochettino feels that he can get that back, whether Pochettino feels like he can push the right buttons. But obviously Mourinho felt he could do it. The Portugal Nuno said he could do it. So I'm just watching the Norwich Villa game out the corner of my eye there, and Villa are doing really well. So Nuno thought he could do it, and obviously Conte gave him a little bit of a go as well. But Conte would recognise very, very quickly. I mean, Conte would walk in a building and he'd see a player that's lost that hunger.
That's the damning thing, isn't it? That the talent was so obvious and he was so brilliant, and the new manager comes in, Mourinho, and thinks, well, I'll get a tune out of him. I'll show him some love, or I'll do what needs to be done, and puts him in the team. And Nuno, same thing. He's so good. I'll be the one who rescues Dele Alli. It's really damning that Conte has arrived and quickly decided this guy ain't for saving. And it's not like Conte doesn't need the players. So, like Dele Alli's had all these. You would think, in answer to your point about lost the hunger, you would think going out of the team, that's the kick up the ass that you need. Oh my God, this could all get taken away. And that's happened to him under several managers now. It's almost like going out on loan is the last roll of the dice, Jesse Lingard style, rescue your career.
Yeah, look, man, if you get dropped out of a team and you've lost that hunger, you don't care. You probably think he's doing me a favour because I can, get on with my life at the weekends or whatnot, or perhaps I won't be in the squad and I can go for dinner. Or, these are the types of things where players who have lost their motivation to be footballers. But I think Conte would have made a decision on Dele Alli probably the first morning, watching him in the warm-up. And you can imagine, you can tell people that are motivated just by the way they warm up. I know that sounds really crazy, but you can tell some people warm up with an intensity and have a feel about them. Boots are tied up, they're ready to go and they're doing everything with 100% focus. And then you can tell the players who aren't, because they've come out to training and they didn't bother tying their boots up, and they'll tie them up when the football starts. But when you're going through the mundane routine stuff, they walk out and the jacket's open and bits. You can tell. You just can't. Any manager any player.
I do notice footballers walking out training with their boots untied and going through the warm-up with their boots untied. And there is, maybe this is getting old school, and God, you think, now I'm just getting old. But you do think there is just an immature, too cool for school vibe with that. Yeah, see, two things there. One, the new boots are like slippers anyway, so you technically don't even really need laces. But I can guarantee you all the players, because when the players come out 10 beforehand, you always play pig in the middle or boxes, or you just have a game of two-touch or something, just, while everyone's coming out in dribs and drabs. But training starts at 10:30, you're moving at 10:30 as a group. Most players will come out at 10:15, and those 15 minutes is just a bit of an enjoyable kind of, a bit of fun before we get going. But I promise you, before you get going, 99% of footballers will tie their boots up. There'll always be one or two that won't. But when the football starts, then they usually do. But again, I know I don't want to be that old pro looking back on in my day, because I always said I'd never be that. But you can tell in any walk of life, in any job, someone that's just lost the will for the fight. Well, let's see what happens with Dele Alli, because everything we're talking about almost applies to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Subbed at Old Trafford when they were chasing a game. Dropped against Southampton at the weekend, 3-0 win. Is not going to play tomorrow. Disciplinary reasons was what Arteta said on Saturday, didn't elaborate. And then the statement came through today from Arsenal that Aubameyang has been stripped of the captaincy. So in their statement, they said all players, particularly our captain, are expected to work to the rules and standards we have all set and agreed, end quote. The reporting seems to be he flew to a different country to bring home his mother who's not well, and to some extent or other, permission hadn't been given, but he certainly outstayed his the window under which he told everybody he'd be back. So he was most certainly back late. Again, we're basing that on just reporting. So it seems to be of that nature. He wasn't on a night out with his mates and went to Paris and didn't come back for 2 days. It does seem like he legitimately had to go, but certainly didn't come back on time. He's 32 years of age. Arteta didn't sound like somebody who was rejoicing in taking this action. He said, since I've been here, my relationship with him has been really, really good. That's why this is painful. It's a really unpleasant situation. And then a quote from Thomas Tuchel back in May. This is around the time Chelsea were due to play Arsenal. So he was asked about, your former player Aubameyang. He said, back in the days of Dortmund, it was a pure pleasure to have him in the squad. He was a fantastic striker, fantastic finisher on the pitch. More than that, he was a fantastic worker off the pitch. He didn't miss one single training session in 2 years. Maybe he arrived 5 minutes late in the training ground. That can happen with him. But if he does this, he's in a hurry, he excuses, he feels sorry, he has a smile on his face. When we wanted him to be on time, we told him the meeting was 10:45 when the meeting was at 11 a.m. So there was a good chance he'd be there with everyone else. It was a pleasure to work with him though, always a smile on his face. Bit of a crazy guy, but nice crazy. We're still in touch from time to time. So that wasn't like, oh, he was a nightmare stuff from Tuchel. He was really good, except for a few little bits around the edges.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one.
I can explain that to you quite easily.
Right.
Borussia Dortmund had a really good culture. And when you got a really good culture and one guy's a little bit, flippant, you can overlook it and do things like that. When you're trying to change the culture of a football club and your captain is carrying on. Now, when you're trying to change a culture, because Arsenal clearly have or had a really poor culture, and I guarantee you, lateness was rampant. People coming out with the boots undone, all this type of carry on, because you can just tell it seeps into your performance on a Saturday. And Arteta's come in and he said, this needs to change. He's coming out of Pep school where he just, doesn't take any prisoners. And if they sat down pre-season and they set out a charter for themselves and they said, look, this is what we need to do. We need to change the culture. And part of changing the culture is moving players out. But then you need to set rules and regulations, and if there is no culture there, then you need to create it as a manager. And obviously then your captain starts breaking it. But when you're trying to do it, you have to lay down the law and you have to tell your players, listen, I'm going to be really strict on this. But a manager's probably really only speaking to 2 or 3 players, who kind of are this way. But you kind of have to say it to the group. But then when, your captain starts doing it, his captain's put him in a horrific position because he's laid down the law. If he creates one moment, if he flinches for 1 second, and the players that, have changed their ways have gone, well, hang on a minute, you said that, that someone was going to be dropped, that they wouldn't be in the squad, or they wouldn't train, or they'd be with the 23s, or whatever the punishment was going to be. And then Aubameyang does that, and you kind of make an exception for him, then you're sunk as a manager, absolutely sunk. There's no coming back from that, because once you do that, you'll have 5 or 6 guys pushing it like children, because a lot of footballers, I've said it before, like children.
This is what I always, I really enjoy talking to you, even on or off air, because anytime we get talking about dressing room, the way you talk about it, it's like it's such a finely balanced ecosystem. And as soon as a manager makes a mistake, like turning a blind eye to an Aubameyang, it really does seem, from listening to you, like all hell will break loose. Like you wouldn't believe.
Absolutely, because then one guy will do it, and then one guy won't pay his fine, and then you'll go, you have to pay the money, and then it'll be like, oh, well, he didn't pay it, and then you're into like, and then you have to go upstairs to see the gaffer and get him to sort it out. Usually, the changing room can sort out bits and pieces like that. But I was always, from speaking to some managers, really good managers, they always used to tell me it takes 6 players to create a culture in the changing room. Now, whether that's a good culture or a bad culture is up to the 6 players, because you will have 3 really strong characters, and then you'll have 3 pretty strong characters, and then the rest are just kind of sitting on a fence waiting to be told what to do. Essentially, that's what it is, And if you've got 6 guys that are kind of doing the wrong things, all the stuff we said, showing up late, being a minute or 2, it's incredibly, frustrating, because the whole squad then will fall on the other side of it. If guys are supposed to be doing gym sessions and they go home and they don't do it and nobody says anything, well, then tomorrow 3 guys are going to do it because they realise this is the norm and this is acceptable. You need a really good core group of players. You need a real good, strong core that when something like that happens with Aubameyang, he's obviously the captain, so I'm presuming he's in that leadership group, that it shouldn't need to go upstairs to the manager. It should be dealt with. If you've got 3 strong leaders in that changing room, vociferous, vocal guys, and something happens, you call it out, absolutely, 100%, and in front of everybody, and you absolutely lambaste someone for it. And if they come back at you, then your 2 mates who are in the leadership group pile in as well. And all of a sudden it's 3 against 1 and the argument's done. But everybody else sees that take place. The guys who are sitting on the fence are witnessing this take place, and they all go, oh, no, I don't want that to be me. I don't want 3 of them to pile in on me. So then they fall on the right side of the line. Whereas when your captain does it, you have to wonder, because you've got young guys there who are learning the game, and young guys that are training with the first team. They might never play a game, but they'll go off and have careers elsewhere. They'll learn lessons from training with strong guys to understand that being on time is important. Because if you're late 5 minutes late, 2 minutes late, 1 minute, 30 seconds late out the training, you'll be 2 seconds late on the pitch. When I make a mistake, you won't be able to help me out because that's just a mentality.
And you do believe that from your experience in the game, that stuff does feed into performance. Yeah,
I could not emphasise that more.
Yeah, because I remember you were saying maybe in your final year at Palace, and Hodgson, who's seen it all, done it all, understands the dynamics of a dressing room. And I guess this applies maybe to Ferguson, keeping on some of the elder statesmen of the class of '92, even when they really were struggling towards the end. Hodgson recognised the importance of keeping you in there as almost a kind of a cultural architect of sorts.
Absolutely.
And he said it to you. He pretty much said, I mean, I need you in there to keep this dressing room on track a little bit.
Well, I was see, like, I mean, look, we had a great team full of like 7 or 8 guys that wouldn't be afraid to tell you how they feel. Like, absolutely wouldn't. Like, you know, and if they were wrong, they'd apologise the following day, and that was fine. Nobody took anything too personal, if you know what I mean. But like, as the club started moving on, players drift away, and all of a sudden 1 or 2 go, and then another 2 go, and then a couple of guys come in. And I was watching this happen, and all of a sudden that core group of 6 was kind of down to 2, and then they had 4 and we had 2, and that's how it was actually unfolding. And I'm struggling to keep hold of it. And then when I do have a blazing argument with someone and they have a go back at you, I'm kind of looking around and I'm like, you know, there's 3 guys on his side now, and it's against me, and they're telling me that I'm the one that's kind of, you know,
OTT. Who, by the way, I wouldn't ask you the unfair question. Who were your kind of generals that kept the dressing room ticking over nicely that you sort of lost? Give me an example of 1 or 2.
Emilio Jedinak he was captain, I was vice captain. Was the 2 people like Danny Gabidon, who'd been around the block, Peter Ramage. I mean, you know,
just good pros.
Paddy McCarthy, who never played in the 5 years, he retired. He's UT manager now, and he was still club captain, but like, he was kept around because he was just one of the good guys, you know, trained well, and they're the guys that set the culture, you know. It's quite easy to set a culture of like going in the gym at 8:30 in the morning, lads are in there and they're really working hard, lifting weights, doing whatever they need to do. All of a sudden that becomes, the word is, you'd be fashionable. That becomes very fashionable to go in the gym early and be in there, and the music and the banter and everything. But it also can be very fashionable to go upstairs and have a cup of tea and read The Sun.
Yeah,
so these are the things when you're setting culture, signing players. So,
and how did that play out then when you started looking around, going, "Oh crap, I'm in the minority, and they're painting me as if I'm being OTT."
I let it go, to be honest with you. I knew it was my last year, and I just did what I could.
Yeah.
But obviously the manager is the person that underpins all that, you know. And if the manager is loose on it, or the manager starts cutting corners for certain players, then you as a person in the changing room finds it very, very difficult to enforce anything, because when it goes upstairs to the gaffer, or if it goes upstairs to the gaffer, you know, the gaffer's going to turn a blind eye to it, and then I'm sunk because I've got nothing to fall back on. Whereas I was always very, very sure that, like, if there was a blazing argument went upstairs, the manager would trust mine or other people's judgment who were trying to set the standards, and they wouldn't even want to hear the story. They'd be like, I don't want to hear it, get out. You know, if he says you were acting up, and that was kind of how it was. And then that message went out very, very quickly. So that
would give you a bit of an authority as well.
Absolutely, that's exactly what you needed, and that's what Arteta's dealing with. And that's if your captain is doing stuff like that. I mean, you should never. He was only made captain because they wanted to keep him. You know, I mean, he was in that contract situation, and I might be wrong there with the timelines, but that's what it felt like anyway. And obviously they gave him that big deal, but he would never have struck you as somebody that would have been captain anyway. No. And has those traits Tuchel is talking about.
Do they have anyone who, because you're not behind the scenes, so it's a slightly unfair question, but anyone just based on what you see on the pitch who strikes you as good captain material?
Look, I mean, you'd hope someone like, it's hard without seeing it, but you know, I thought Xhaka might have been a decent shout of being a bit. He had it and it got taken off him because he fell out with the fans. Someone like Kieran Tierney looks like a good sort. He really does. You know, he's someone that I think I would have liked to played with. You know, but obviously he has his injury issues. But either which way, you need to pick a club captain. You know, so even if he's not playing, he's still the club captain, and then you need to get the right characters in there. And I think that's where Arsenal have fallen down. They've just gotten wrong types, and I think that's where you end up with cultural issues.
Okay. I see various quarters, Gav Cooney, for instance, here in the 42. FAI are offering Stephen Kenny and his management team contract extensions to include the qualifying campaign for the 2024 European Championship. So we can presume that's incoming. So the full Euros campaign, that's the contract heading Stephen Kenny's way, is the report. Correct decision?
I don't know. I'm on the fence about it a little bit. I think I did a show with the guys on Saturday a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking, you know, maybe the full Nations League, because I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet with Stephen. But look, it's a show of confidence that we all know that, you know, Stephen's regardless of the length of the contract he has, he's under immense pressure from the start of the Nations League. He managed to salvage it, put it out the fire at the end of the qualifying campaign there, and managed to kind of finish in the position that everyone probably thought we would finish anyway, which was third. But I still think there's a lot of questions. I hope he can continue the upward curve, the upward trajectory that he's kind of on at the moment. But the Nations League is huge for him, and if it doesn't go well, I don't think he'll see the Euros. Well, maybe he will. I don't know. But there's a lot of goodwill around for him at the moment, and I feel that he has had more kind of leeway than probably any other manager in the Irish team's history. And how long that will last for the Irish public, I don't know. How long you can keep selling. We're playing well, we're blooding young players. Eventually, people are going to want to start seeing results, and I think that has to start happening in the Nations League. But obviously, I know that let's say, I don't, for argument's sake, we get drawn against an Albania or Finland, or I haven't seen I have seen the potential groups. I haven't the hand up some of that, and we get off to a poor start. Is it a case of here we go again, or are we sticking with this now for the next 4 years? A lot of questions to be asked, but I suppose for Stephen, it's a good show of confidence. And obviously, you don't know what break clauses are in those types of contracts anyway, without delving in. But look, it's a good thing, I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
You're getting splinters there. Oh, my God. Tie your shoelaces and just give me a bloody answer.
I know. Sorry.
Man City 6-0 up now. 6-0 up. 73 minutes in the clock. This could be 8 or 9, I would think. John Stones this time, so it's all too easy. Is it still 1-0 Villa?
No, 2-0 Villa. Ollie Watkins scored.
Okay.
Decent work goal, but good night for Villa.
Before you go, a man you wanted us to mention, and I wasn't familiar with his name, but I know lots of people in Irish football and Cork football in particular are hugely familiar with Jerry Harris, who passed away at the age of 81. So I was reading a bit about him. He's been involved with Cork City really since the foundation of the club, and in pretty much any capacity you care to mention: player, coach, kitman, most recently club secretary. I think he retired in 2016 when he would have been well into his 70s, obviously. So he's passed away at the age of 81. Tell us about Jerry Harris and why you wanted to mention him.
Stunningly kind man, first and foremost. Really was. I mean, the amount of time and commitment that he gave to Cork City Football Club predominantly, but also Cork football, because he's been involved. I mean, he is a real honest, hard-working guy, and I don't think you'd find anyone in League of Ireland circles or in Cork that would disagree with that. He put so much work into Cork City in the good and the bad times, and especially in the bad times. That people like Jerry Harris and Noel Feeney, who passed away a number of years ago, are the people that made sure there was something to salvage by showing up and doing voluntary work. As I said, I don't think anyone would disagree with that, and he was a wonderful man. And my own personal experience with Jerry was the first time I met him. I was 16 years of age, playing for Avondale in an under-18 match against Cork City. And Jerry was the coach of Cork City under-18s. And after the game, he came up to me and he said, "Would you be interested in coming up and playing for us next year?" And I remember that as if it was yesterday. I mean, it was the moment of my sporting life for him to come up and ask that of me. And of course, I went to Cork City and I played for a year under Jerry, and he was a wonderful man. I mean, we had a fabulous team. But then Jerry went up and became kit man for the first team. And when I got in the first team, he was the kit man. And obviously, when I went back in 2018, Jerry was still travelling to the away games with the first team on the bus. And I used to sit and chat with him on the trips home. And we used to talk and reminisce. And when that text came through this morning, it brought back some memories for me, and he was a wonderful man, really, really kind, gentle man, and he was as selfless, and I mean genuinely as selfless as any human being you're ever likely to come across.
Oh, that's a great tribute. Well said. Damien Delaney, thanks so much. Have a great Christmas. If I'm not talking to you, take care. Cheers.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Taking stock.
Canada is home to millions of people who claim Irish heritage, and in recent years it's welcomed a new generation eager to work and make a life for themselves there. We'll talk about that relationship with the new Canadian ambassador to Ireland. Turkey is dealing with soaring inflation and failing currency, but what of its future? And we'll hear the story of an Irish fireman who's fighting climate change